Hi, Mr. Don here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about watercolor. Watercolor is a fantastic medium, very beautiful, but it's a very tricky and sometimes very difficult medium to work with. We're going to be working with that for the next couple of weeks. There's some specific equipment I want you to see and to obtain. We'll be talking about that in the next video, and I'll be giving you some stuff in class so that you can enhance this experience. Um, Watercolor is much different than acrylic and oils. Acrylic and oils are what they call opaque. There's an opacity to them. You can't see through them. You can manipulate them to see through them with glazes and different things like that. But for the most part, they're opaque. They're solid. You don't see through them. Watercolor is a transparent medium. You're going to see through watercolor. You're going to see the colors underneath, and especially you can see the white paper underneath, because the one thing that's other than the next thing that's significantly different is that there's no white paint in watercolor. Um, Watercolor, the white is the paper, and you have to learn to paint using that white. So your light colors are going to be reflecting the white of the paper through them. So, and your dark colors are going to have to, you're going to have to hide the white paper. So it's going to be different. Now, some of you are buying sets, and I told you to buy tubes, and you can put these in tubes in a palette that has color, the color trays. And then there's a place you can mix your colors there. Some of you may get a set that has Chinese white in it. Chinese white is a watercolor, but it's an opaque watercolor. And if you use Chinese white, you're going to create a different type of paint with that. You can paint with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good to use for a highlight or something. But what happens when you use opaque, and if you create opaque watercolors, you're actually creating what they call a gouache, Gouache. Gouaches are opaque watercolors. They behave the same as watercolors for the most part. I don't use them, so I don't know too much about them. But they do. An opaque watercolor is technically a gouache, and it's different. We're not using them because that's just a different medium, and we're going to use watercolors. Some of the great artists who use watercolors are Winslow Homer, Frank Benson, and John Singer Sargent. Winslow Homer has a terrific portfolio of watercolors, and they're very beautiful. They're crisp, they're clean. You should look at those. Edward Hopper was another artist. Frank Benson is a favorite artist of mine, and these artists I'm mentioning to you are favorite artists of mine. These are people who I've studied before, these four especially, in watercolor. There's a lot of different techniques to use. There are techniques, masking techniques that we have to look at and use. The brushes you're going to use are different. The brushes are going to be hair brushes. You should get hair, even if it's synthetic. It should be more of a hair type brush. More the professionals use ermine and mink and sable brushes for watercolors. You need to get something similar to that, or something along that line of hair. You can't use the same synthetic brushes you use for acrylics. Nor can you use the brushes you've used for oils. It's just not going to work. You could technically do it, but it's not going to be pretty. So we want to make something that's beautiful and make beautiful marks. The process is almost identical, but there are some differences. You're going to have to do research, find your subject matter, and you can do any kind of subject matter you want. You can paint still lifes, watercolors, you can paint landscape watercolors, you can paint marine watercolors, you can paint anything. But the thing is, you have to plan it. And it has to be specifically planned, because if you've got a white barn in there, you just can't slop on some paint to make the white barn. You've got to paint around the white of the paper to make that white barn, and then the shadows have to be lighter colors, and you have to do a lot of planning. So you have to, number one, do some research. Number two, you have to do some thumbnails. Find out where your shadows are going to be, where your darks are going to be, and then find out where the lights are going to be, because you're going to be painting from light to dark. All the other ways in oils and acrylics, we painted dark to light because we could cover the dark if we made a mistake, or you know, if we wanted to put something in, add something in, we cannot do that now. We've got to paint light to dark. So you've got to plan out your lights. You've got to plan this thing out very meticulously. And again, if you make a mistake, it's best just to throw it away. If I make a mistake in oil, I just paint over it. If I make a mistake in acrylic, same. With this, we're going to be working 4x6, 5x7, very small, on prepared pieces of paper, watercolor paper, and we'll just toss them. If they don't work right, we'll toss them. There's two different types of paper that you have to use. We're not going to use cardstock anymore for this. You have to paint with either hot pressed or cold pressed. Comes in different poundages based on how thick the paper is. But hot pressed, imagine you're ironing something, ironing a shirt, and you make it nice and flat. Hot pressed paper, watercolor paper is nice and flat, has a nice flat surface. Cold pressed is a bit more, has a little bit almost like a wrinkle to it, a texture. So we'll be using cold pressed to start, and if we get the brushes right, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to start slow and work into something big. So be prepared for the other two videos, and I'll see you then.